How are you doing today? Today we're going to talk about just briefly about calibration and the PID settings. Uh, Try not to really go into too much detail about them. Just some of the basics that you need to know and kind of why you have it and stuff like that. So I may have mentioned these things in other videos because it's maybe relevant to whatever that feature was doing. But this is just going to be a general thing about why do a calibrate, right? So as you can see, um, the rods move from end to end, and each has a different distance it can move, right? So the app and the devices need to know where the rods are at all times in order to pretty much play a defense consistently and successfully, right? Well, um, the first thing that happens when you turn the devices on is it does its own calibration. But you can do a calibration as well by just hitting the calibrate button here. So if you watch the rods when I hit it, see how they move out? They're going to move in and then back out. Okay. The reason they move out is because it needs sort of like a starting point. So it can say, okay, I'm here. I know I'm here. Tell me where all the other positions are. So it always moves out. It sets kind of like a static position and then it goes back and forth and it stores that position in the system. Now, something about the motors is the motors are working on sensors that are built in, like electronic sensors, and they kind of track where the motor is. And that is also communicating with the web app and the FoosFit devices. Well, there are occasions when you're slinging these rods around really fast, especially in like playback mode where they're like really jumping around. Um, they can get off calibration slightly. And it takes time. The more you're slinging them, the more they get off. And it's usually little bitty, tiny microscopic motions that they get off. For instance, it could be, bobbing back and forth like this. And then all of a sudden you notice it's bobbing right here and it's kind of going past the hole. Well, if you see that your defense looks like it's slightly shifted, then all you have to do is hit the calibrate button like that. Boom. What it's doing is telling the app, hey, let's reposition everything and make sure we're back in tune, right? Now, so that's calibrate. The PID is a little bit different. In every mode that you're going to run, you rarely will ever touch the PID settings. The only one that you may touch the PID setting in is in the playback mode. And if you notice, let me just show you something. I'm in the goalie rod. I hit the PID. It says 1.34 here for KP, right? If I go to a different mode, let's say I go to manual mode, see that the PID changes because the PIDs are specific to the mode because each mode is using different software with different formulas and logic to do its work. So they need their own PID settings to do what they're doing, basically. So the one I like to use though is the playback mode because that's the one where you will have to set it. The other modes you won't have to set really, but they're there mostly for if we ever need them. And sometimes we had to set them in the beginning and I kind of left them there. But anytime you reboot your app, they're always going to go back to the default because the default is 99% are going to be where they need to be anyway. But I will tell you that when you're in playback mode, and like if you're in the goalie, see I'm in the goalie rod right now, and it's set to 1.34. Now you're never going to have to set the KI, KD. So I'm not even going to talk about them, but the KP, occasionally you may have to tweak it a hair for the playback mode because the playback mode is very, very dependent on exact positioning or else your defenses are going to look really screwy. So I've explained this in the playback video, but I'm going to do it really quickly here. Whenever you start the playback mode, you're going to hit the run playback test and watch very carefully what happens to the rods. They went to the center of the table. See that? Two rod is dead center and the goalie rod's dead center right there. And it does it by doing this. 127 is the dead center of the table. From 0 to 255, 127, 128 are considered the middle, right? So we just set it to 127 and we hit the test. And that's what's happening here. It's telling the rods, hey, I want you to go to 127. Sorry. So now I put a little baby pencil mark on the middle of the table right here for me. And I did it right here on the goalie rod as well. And So when I hit the run play back test, I take a quick peek over there and I see, is the man dead center on the mark? And if he is, boom, I'm done. I don't have to do anything. But if I see, because occasionally, for whatever reason, the motors, when you turn them on, they may just be a hair off because the communication with the sensors in the motor. Well, if you set the KPI up, say like 2 clicks to 1.38, it's telling the rod, I want you to be positioned more out here. If you go down from where it was at 2 clicks, you're saying, I want you to be in towards the motor, right? So just remember, up goes out and in is down. Well, if you do that, and I always tell people, just kick it away from the line. So when you run the test, it'll try to jump back to the line. Now I went down from 134 to 1.3. If I hit that, it's going to jump, watch. You see the rod in the back didn't jump because he's already on his point. Oh, sorry. Now you see, I almost made that mistake again. I'm in the goalie rod, right? And I'm trying to set the PID, which you don't want to do. So we're going to go back here and we're going to go to the 2 rod. There we go. 1.44. Let's try that again. So we're going to go down and I'm going to kick the rod a little bit. I'm going to hit the test. And there you go. So I look at the rod and I go, it's off. It should be like right there, but it's right here. That's because I moved it and I didn't need to, but I just wanted to show you. So it does move it in, right? So if I go back up to 1.44 and I give the rod a little kick like that and hit the test again. And it's perfectly aligned now between the dots. So that's all you're trying to do. That's going to guarantee that when a defense is running through the motions, if you want it to block middle like that, it's going to block dead center middle. If your device is off, you're going to notice whatever you record, it'll be off a hair, up or down, right? And it won't be where you want. So that's the purpose of the PID. Now the PID generally doesn't get off hardly ever, and you won't really have to set it much. And it has nothing to do with the calibration per se. If you've been running your playback for a while and your PID settings are spot on with your test and you notice that they're off a little bit, you still may have to run the calibration test, okay? Because that's a different issue. So that is really all I want to talk about with the PID. Just remember, playback mode is the one you're going to probably have to do the most if you ever have to, and it's just the KP. Up moves it away from the device, down moves it towards it. If you notice weird things going on, the rods are shifted a little bit, hit the calibrate button, and then just go on with your practicing and everything will be fine. So that's PID and calibration. I'm not going to get into how they work, but I can tell you that PID is in everything from cruise control, airplanes, remote control cars, drones. Everything uses PID in life. Okay. PID is one of the most universal things. It means proportional integral derivative. And it's using mathematical formulas to derive positions and how aggressive you move to a position, and all these things are happening. How fast you want to move to it and how accurate you want to be. So these PID settings have been tested over and over and over till we get as close as we can to what we call real movement. Because as you set the PIDs, you are basically simulating what you would consider real movement, a rod moving smooth or really aggressive. So we played with them to get them as close as we can to what we would consider or feel like real life movement. Nothing's perfect, right? You're converting a fake world of math into a real world of movement, right? So you're never going to get something what you consider exact, but you can get a really close replication. It's no different than a video player, right? It's not real life. It's just a recording of you, right? So, okay. So that's all I want to talk about today. Good luck, have fun, and see you on the next video.